Hello, everybody. Welcome to Equipment Setup, Workflows, Troubleshooting. This is our May webinar, our 5th webinar in a series of 8, intended to help build and strengthen a network of memory labs in California. Many thanks to the State Library for supporting this series and for establishing a new CopyCat grant program to build and support new labs in the state. And the links to register for future webinars are here at the bottom of the slide. And that's where you can find recordings of other webinars from the past, along with slides, lots and lots of resources. And I always give a shout out to Siobhan's deep dive training, which will also be part of our star. Our star today is the deep dive. We're going to dive in today. And I did want to introduce our special guests here. Shahed Dowlatshahi is our AV Preservation Manager at California Revealed. And Siobhan Hagan is Memory Lab Network's Project Manager, who designed the curriculum that the series is based upon and available at this website below. So I'm just going to let Shahed and Siobhan take it away. Please introduce yourselves. And thank you so much for being here.
Great, cool. Thanks, Pamela, so much. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Siobhan Hagan, the Memory Lab Network Project Manager, which is based out of DC Public Library in Washington, DC. And just a little quick reiteration of what that project is an IMLS, Institute of Museum and Library Services, National Leadership Grant to bring do-it-yourself personal archiving labs to the nation. So we have some libraries in our network, like officially part of our network, but a big part of it is then bringing out everything that we're learning and putting together all the resources to other libraries who want to start their own do-it-yourself personal archiving labs. So I'm so happy to be here to share with you guys what we've learned and try and help answer any questions in whatever phase you're in. And any questions that you might have. And I'm really happy to be joined by Shahed.
Thanks, Siobhan and Pamela. Hi, everyone. I'm Shahed. I did the last previous webinar for this series, Introduction to Audiovisual Preservation Basics, and just helping out a bit here on this one with Siobhan doing most of the heavy lifting on this presentation. But I'm happy to talk a little bit about the community archiving workshop kit that we have at California Revealed, and yeah, looking forward to helping out as anybody has any questions and to be part of this presentation. Good to be with you all today.
Cool. Yeah. So we're going to be talking today about Memory Lab digitization and transfer equipment, the setup, the workflows, and then the inevitable troubleshooting of those workflows and the equipment. The main objective of today's presentation is really to empower you all to do this work. Once you get to the point in the stage of building your memory lab, I know a lot of you aren't quite there yet. But I just want to tell you, you can do this work, really, you can. And the great news is that you're not alone. A huge step in troubleshooting is reaching out and asking others what they think. And so you have not just me and the Slack channel of the Memory Lab Network, which please reach out to Pamela or me if you haven't been added. I can add you to that Slack channel. But then you're also so fortunate to have the great folks at California Revealed, like Pamela and Shahed, to talk to and ask questions to as well. So you really got this. You really do. So making you more confident to troubleshoot your workflows and equipment when things go wrong, and they will go wrong, trust me, is the main thing that we're going to be covering. Or really, that's the main thing I really want you to get from today. And then the other things that we'll be covering today, in not really any particular order, is that we'll be teaching you some foundational skills about the equipment and about workflows, in particular audiovisual workflows, and how to troubleshoot those. But then also we're going to be talking through some examples, real world, real life examples. And then absolutely 100% we'll be covering how to embrace failure and just accept it as part of the process. That's how it works. is by failing, if that makes sense. So the first thing that we're going to start out with is obtaining the equipment and then testing your equipment, which will lead us into troubleshooting. So it's tough to kind of, like every part of the memory lab and building a memory lab, it's tough to really say like, first you do this, then you do this, then you do that, because a lot of it is overlap, and you might do one part now and one part later, and every place is different too. So this feels like the best first place to start when in this lecture-y kind of environment that we're in, with equipment and donations, collecting donations. I believe that you guys did talk a bit about this before, so I apologize for maybe doing a little bit of overlap, but I think it's also because there's so much information, it'll be good to maybe be a little repetitive on some of this stuff, in case you forgot something or just a reminder. And then, so all about donations, purchasing, and then hooking up those pieces of equipment that you've purchased and received donations from, and then testing that out as well. So I'm just gonna jump. There's gonna be a lot of jumping to the deep dive today and going back and forth to our slides, because it just didn't really make sense. This deep dive document is out there for you. I know that it can be really overwhelming, and so that's where I want to familiarize you all with it, and so that you feel less maybe overwhelmed by it, and you're like, oh, okay, now I know where to go for this information, instead of being like, this is a lot of words on a Google document that I just am overwhelmed by. So where we're jumping first is we're going to be going to donations. So if you just click to that hyperlink, it just jumps you down to this part of the Google document. So this is where I kind of walk everyone through how to ask your community for equipment donations of, old TVs, VCRs, even you'll need like VHS tapes and floppy disks to test your equipment out. You need actual things with content recorded onto them, so not just blank VHS tapes and things like that. So it's a good idea to have backups as well. That's definitely been covered. Especially VCRs, CRT, that stands for cathode ray tube, which is basically those old big heavy television sets. It's always good to have those, and some test media examples, as I mentioned. And these items should hold content, but they also shouldn't be unique. So don't pull something from your archive. It could be a VHS tape with like maybe something recorded off air onto it, or even a commercial, Disney sort of thing that you're just using for snippets, because obviously we don't want to infringe upon anyone's copyright. But yeah, don't use the only copy of Grandma's 90th birthday, as I give an example here. So yeah, it's harder and harder and more expensive to like purchase these kinds of things. So it's really great to get donations in from your community, and most people do want to get rid of them if they haven't gotten rid of them already. So it's better for us to take it and use it than to put it in a landfill somewhere. And then, for each section of this deep dive, I try and let you guys know how long it'll take you to kind of go through and read and or watch the videos. Obviously that's going to be really different for people, and especially if you this is like if you just sat down and focused. So that way you're kind of you're able to maybe block out your calendar, but it's very approximate. So I'm saying that this is probably going to take 3 to 4 hours. And the formulating a plan document, which you all were sent, that is a big part in kind of coming up with how you're going to solicit for donations. We have an official letter template if you want to use for something more formal. And I believe one of our partners, it might have been Tulare, that or maybe it was Calcasieu, or someone gave us an example of a letter for, asking for more official, can we have some donations? Here's more about our project, sort of thing. Then I do have it's going to start playing automatically. I have this webinar that we recorded for the Memory Lab Network on YouTube, so it's readily available.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, hello self. And it is, Kelly Hayden gave this presentation way back in 2018, wow. But it's basically teaches you how to choose to the best video playback deck for your tape to file transfers, and basically evaluating the decks that you receive in from donations. So is it consumer? Is it something in the middle, which is called prosumer? Is it professional deck? So this presentation will help you learn about that. And jumping back to the deep dive, there's this video tutorial on how, so I know you might know how to use a spreadsheet, but do you know how I like to use a spreadsheet? I just love spreadsheets so much. And it really, there are, I have been told that there are some tips in here that I put for organizing your information and to make your life easier in the future that some people did not know about. So I do recommend potentially taking a look at this, all 37 minutes. I can't believe I talked about spreadsheets that long, but basically I'm kind of using an example of one of our partners and their equipment and supplies inventory, and kind of showing how to keep it organized and why you would want to. This can also be applied to inventorying audiovisual items too. So I think it's just a good resource. So now I need to get back to the deep dive. And then here is, and then we provide a Google Sheets inventory example. So like an example from that video tutorial. So you can just like make a copy and then add your own stuff, but just to make a copy of this Google Sheets, just so that you can have some place to start. And then, so here's an inventory example, and then here's like a template. So you can either download it, it's empty, that's the thing, yeah. So it doesn't have any information. So you can download it and open it in Excel or some other spreadsheet software, go and make a copy and put it in your Google Drive. This video tutorial is on testing a donated VCR, wow, what a lovely face I'm making, and some TV equipment. So we basically at DCPL got some, I think we got 2 VCRs. Hi, everybody. 2 VCRs donated and like an old TV monitor, one of the CRT tubes that I mentioned. So and some other random stuff, which you might get from people if they're like, oh, you want all my video stuff, and they'll bring it in and you'll be like, oh, actually, what the heck is this? And do I actually want it? So I kind of go through all that. This one is less obnoxiously long. It's like only 12 minutes, a little over 12 minutes. So I kind of like point out things to look for on the back. I think it's a really great start to start with Kelly's talk first, and then maybe watch this. And then this video tutorial, probably too long again, but I like to kind of rather put too much information than not enough, but basically you get to just watch me clean. We got a high 8 and a super 8 viewer, which is really much more safe on film, on motion picture film, home movies, than a projector. I never recommend running anyone's home movies through a projector. But these viewers, if you get one of these viewers in, and just like, so you could watch this just to take a look at what one of these viewers look like, but we got one, and this will happen a lot. You'll get something that someone stored in their basement or whatever, and it has like mold all over it and dirt. So, but you can very easily salvage it with just a few minutes of cleaning with distilled water and maybe a little bit of alcohol. So just kind of wanted to show you. So since, you can't actually physically watch me in person or do it yourself, you get a kind of a look and see how I cleaned it. So that's donations, because I feel like that's a lot of what you'll be dealing with, cleaning things, evaluating things. Do we really want this? In what part do we want this? How are we going to label this? Is this consumer? Is this professional? And what are we going to use it for? So then I luckily just have to scroll down to go to the next stage that I was going to talk about, which is purchasing. So obviously I like library partners in the network to do donation solicitations first, see what you get from your community, and then we do the purchasing, because for a few of our partners, they got a really nice broadcast quality SVHS deck from doing solicitations to local TV stations and things like that, and professionals that worked in broadcasting. So then it's like, oh, cool, that's a huge chunk of the budget. We don't have to purchase. What else are we going to get? We're going to get you a mini DV deck or DV cam deck. Are we going to get you something else, that compact cassette or something like that? So we do purchasing next, and purchasing is just with so many libraries and different municipal governments and rules and regulations and policies about purchasing. It's been really interesting and very hard to be able to say, here's a link, purchase this, because that's not how it's good. That's not how it goes. Many times because people can't purchase things from, or they have to at least set them up as a vendor in their system and jump through all these hoops. So nothing is necessarily for certain. So plan around your organization's policies, talk directly to those who know those policies, and maybe do this during a time when you're getting donations. So you start to figure out, can we use this vendor? Can we not use this vendor? Since many of the items you need for a memory lab, they're hard to find, as I mentioned, because they're no longer manufactured, it's going to be, eBay would be great to be able to buy things off of. It keeps costs down, but then also like it's more of a crapshoot of, is it going to work? What kind of condition is it going to be in? But many people can't buy from eBay anyway. So other vendors and websites are ideal, or that's ideal, but other vendors are really necessary for us. So just keep searching for exactly what we're looking for until maybe you find a vendor that's approved by your library, as well as your budget. That's the balance. I put a link here to the Smithsonian's Time-Based Media website, which has a list of vendors. You can check that out. And then thanks to Pamela, we started a list of equipment sourcing companies to try and take a look at and see if maybe they are vendors that are in your system, or start working on getting them into your system, early on in the process. So trying to keep this a little simple and not say like, you need to buy your SVHS deck from this vendor. But it's sort of like, this vendor has video playback decks. This vendor has audio and video playback decks. And these first ones also, I say here in the notes, like they can do repair work. So if your deck does go down, then you can go back to them and send them the deck and they'll work on it. And then also like it should come with a warranty, maybe 6 months or something like that. So that's always nice. It's more, at least you'll have 6 months out of it. So I try and put any tips that I know about them, about working with them, like Back Porch Broadcast. They don't really have a list of their inventory online. Just give them a call and see, what they have. And, but then these, I try and say like the first 4 ones, like you should get something from them and be right out of the gate, ready to go. These other ones, BMI Surplus and GSA Auctions and Advantage, like those, you might get something that might need a little work, but it is actually, and it should be cheaper though. And that's why it's cheaper too, because they might not necessarily be able to tell you that it's going to work for you. So maybe you purchase something from there and then use some funds to send it to someone to repair it, which is totally a way to go if you just can't find what you're looking for. And then we have some other B&H, Markertech, and Adorama. I guess that's how you say it. Those are just 3 larger vendors. I think we have all of those in our system, which is pretty great. It's hard for something to be in our system. So I can kind of like go back and forth and just choose which one is the better price. I know a lot of people know about B&H, but maybe they don't know necessarily about Markertech or Adorama. So those, you can find, like Markertech's more video focused, but then Adorama and B&H do photo and video as well. You can get cables there. The analog to digital converter, it would be purchased there, and cables as well. And then also they do sell computers and the scanner, which I have listed down here too. Or some of them do, the photo places do. We can absolutely, if you have a question about other things that you're looking for that I haven't quite covered, or you need another example of a vendor, I absolutely want to help out and can add it to this too. You're helping other people find stuff. So that is our sourcing document for vendors, but also please keep in mind these are suggestions, not necessarily recommendations. They have been somewhat vetted, but not like officially vetted because we can't really do that. So please keep in mind that we're only paying, the Memory Lab Network, the IMLS project. We only buy our partners because of the budget, a scanning station for, you know, the photo and negatives and transparencies. And then we also have a VHS digitization station. So those are our main two focus formats. And because they're the most expensive and the most frequently used stations at our lab, and everyone has VHS, everyone has photos and negatives. So I'm just saying that like a lot of this information in this doc and everything, or in this section, we're talking about those formats, but we'll discuss adding other formats in another section towards the end of the document, which I haven't fully fleshed out yet, but there's also in this list of equipment and supplies that we supply to our Memory Lab Network partners, there is a tab. I'm gonna click in it, and there is a tab. So here is just like, this is basically a shopping list, right? And I try and keep it updated because this is stuff that's changing all the time. So down here at the bottom, we have main Memory Lab equipment, and then we have supplies that we recommend. And then we have, if you want to do additional formats, then we have that listed there and with the price and a link out. But then in the expanding your Memory Lab section is where I'll talk more about workflows and things like that for those. But a lot of our workflows and hooking up and testing is very much based on VHS format. So those are that's our list. Also want to mention purchasing equipment for a mobile lab. We have a Making It Mobile section where there's also another list, shopping list basically that you can, actually there's a few that you can pick and choose from depending on if you want it super cheap, if you want it really physically light, and then if you want like a full mobile lab, then we have that list too. And so you say, you know, I have my equipment, let's say, and how in the heck do I, you know, hook this up? So don't be nervous. We'll be talking about that all today. And if you want to, maybe you might have someone come in and say, I want to do this in my house. I just have too much stuff. I have the resources to buy some stuff. How can I do it? I have a list because I have been asked this before. And I figured if I've been asked, maybe someone else will be asked. So I have a list of items to say, if you want to do this at home, kind of thinking about like, if it's just one person at home doing it themselves. So it's a little bit different. And we are moving now into the hooking it up and testing. So I really, really want to focus on this because I've definitely been in this position where I get everything and I'm like, yes, I got everything. And then I wait to hook it all. It's like something happens, I put it off. And then the warranty is gone past, or like the window for, you know, sending something back has passed. So really make sure to schedule that in. Like it's gonna order it all relatively at the same time or to arrive at the same time. And then open everything up immediately, plug it in, even if it's new, right? And make sure nothing's damaged in shipping or came damaged or anything like that. So you want to make sure it powers on, but then you also want to make sure that it works in the way that it's intended with these other pieces of equipment because everything is connected. So many places, you know, won't take things back after 30 days. Keep that in mind. I recommend, you know, purchase all around the same time. Don't schedule a vacation in for around the time when it's going to arrive, etc. So we have a video here where I just basically walk you through hooking up our SVHS, like the whole setup of what we recommend to our Memory Lab partners. And so, oopsie doodle. So that is, didn't mean to click that. About about like 14 minutes, so not too long, so you can kind of take a look. I try and do things where there are multiple ways of seeing something. So you have that tutorial on hooking everything up, but then you can also I recommend taking a look at this document first, really, because I think this is maybe the most confusing, but then watching the video will make this make more sense. And I think the two together work really well to for me to try and teach you and others to try and teach you from afar without actually being there and being able to show you with your equipment. So once again, I have this document where it's like set up VHS station. I have some other formats in there that hopefully might work for you. But so basically the video shows me taking an SVHS deck and hooking it up using these cables to a time-based corrector, into an AD converter, into a Mac Mini, an older Mac Mini, to be clear. So this is the thing that the equipment has changed over time due to its availability and cost, or pricing for us for what's in the budget. So the principles are still the same, but it might not be the exact Mac Mini, and so you have to use Thunderbolt 3 or a Thunderbolt 2 adapter or something like that. So just keep this in mind that you're not going to be religiously doing exactly what I'm doing, but this setup is what I'm using in the video. So at least then you can mirror that and be like, okay, this is what I'm seeing. So you can see this wiring diagram, which I'm not sure if you guys have learned necessarily about wiring diagrams. They might look a little confusing, but they are really helpful to know once you know how to read them, basically, that the video signal is coming from the SVHS deck. And I like color coding things, but for that, where you can see that's the video signal is yellow. So we have a video signal that's going here and all through these pieces of equipment, but then I also have it going out to the CRT monitor just to test it, just to make sure that the video signal is good. And we'll get into troubleshooting later. That's what I use our CRT monitor for. But then you can see the audio comes out of RCA, and technically it's 2 RCA cords coming out, and I just have it labeled red because just to differentiate it. So yeah, so that's where you can kind of understand that everything goes into the while there's the time-based corrector is kind of as a 2-step process before it goes into the analog to digital converter for video. It just goes directly from the deck, the audio, to the AD converter. And then also, not only do I have the wiring diagram here, then I kind of walk you through with text exactly what you'll be doing as well to hook everything up. So and there are different ways of looking at things. And then also it talks about using the software desktop video that comes with Blackmagic. Any Blackmagic AD converter you get will have this process, which I need to point out that this is usually the first part of troubleshooting anything. This is the first thing that usually goes wrong for people, is that with a Blackmagic AD converter, there's 2 places you have to set your preferences and your settings before the AD converter will work. So the first one, I walk you through going into desktop video and making sure that the video input is set to S video. You can set it to composite as well. Those are the 2 options, but we recommend using S video to get that little extra amount of color information. So and then it's all about your inputs here. So just kind of talking about that. And then you go into Media Express, which is the actual software that is capturing the video and the audio and the video. And so I walk you through going into that and going into the preferences section. And it's a little bit different if you're using Windows, just keep that in mind. I think it's called something, not preferences, but settings, or something a little bit different, but it is still a two-step process. Another thing that's a little confusing is that it'll have you choose you have to choose 525 I is interlaced. The 525 is really referencing NTSC. I think you guys covered NTSC, but it's basically the color standard that that we use in the United States for SD, standard definition video. So the thing that has been confusing people I've seen is that then the file that they get outputted actually is like 486, but 525 is the standard. That just know that but without getting too confusing, just know you want to choose 525. That's the NTSC standard. I stands for interlaced. another thing that like, this is what you need to choose, not the other option is progressive, but you want interlace because that's what the original SD video is. And then 5.9.94, that's like the frame rate, but that's not the frame rate that your SD video is at. This just means up to 5.9. It's just like, but yours will fall lower than that because it's going to basically just do what is natively put into the Blackmagic. So just keep that in mind, that it's like, I've had people be like, wait, I thought our frame rate was 29.9, you know, and it is, but this is the one that you want to choose. And so, yeah, so then I walk through testing things, which is basically just the workflow that's taken from our guide for using the lab, because testing is exactly how you use it. You just do a little clip rather than an entire tape or anything like that. So yeah, so this walks you through that and can walk you through with lots of screenshots too, and multiple formats as well. So that's that document. And once again, you can kind of refer to that and then watch the video tutorial of putting it all together. And the time-based corrector, I want to show you this other, or just let you know that there's this other video tutorial. I don't need to click out on it, but on a different model TBC. And I'm pretty sure, actually I do want to click out to it because I just want to see what it is. I'm pretty sure this is the TBC that we recommend now, which so that at least you can see that one being hooked up. Pretty sure, yep. This is the one that you guys would be, or that we recommend, sorry, for our Memory Lab network partners now, because the other ones are no longer manufactured. So I just want you guys to know that this is the time-based corrector that you would most likely be using, and I show you how to hook it up, because it's just a little bit different than the one in the first video tutorial, but I want you to be able to like understand and see things being hooked up and referring back to this wiring diagram. So test everything, each and every cable. In our list, we have extra cables and adapters that we put in there, because I always recommend having extra. You'll see why in a little bit. So just test them all when you get them, right? And make sure that they work. Because if you want to make sure that you get something that's that works, and if it's defective or damaged, you send it back. So things that you'll need is our test tapes, and you need to test all of them to make sure that the equipment works as it's supposed to. So you need an SVHS tape, a VHS tape at regular speed, at slower speed. You need a VHS-C tape, so then you're going to test your adapter out and make sure that that works. The scanning station test media is probably going to be a little bit easier to get, but you need 35mm slides. It'd be best to get color and black and white to test those. Photographic negatives, any size really, but test both color and black and white to see how that works, if it works. Photographic prints, color, black and white. Try a flyer or a pamphlet or something like that to kind of make sure that that's working. So making sure everything's working, you've gotten replacements if you needed. Then you need to test your workflows that you created for running the lab space. And this is kind of getting into the overlapping areas that we'll talk about, but we recommend having a core of group staff or volunteers to be your beta testers. Have them bring in their own photos, negative slides, their own stuff, basically, so that they can have like this investment, and give them the training and documentation that you plan on giving your public. And then you ask your beta testers for as much feedback for what worked and what didn't, and then change things accordingly. So now I'm going to jump back to the slides. So we've gone through these three parts, but then before we jump to workflows, let's talk about what a workflow is. I hate to take words and their definitions for granted. So let's get on the same page. What is a workflow? According to Wikipedia, a workflow consists of an orchestrated and repeatable pattern of activity enabled by the systemic organization of resources into processes that transform materials, provide services, or process information. So it continues on. It can be depicted as a sequence of operations, the work of a person or group, the work of an organization of staff, or one or more simple or complex mechanisms. So mostly I am using the word workflow as a process in how to get something specific done. Many times folks make workflow diagrams to illustrate the process of the work, especially when it's like non-sequential, or maybe there's multiple processes that different people do different things. So they want to write that out and show the different flow of things. And also I'm a really visual learner personally, so I love it when people make diagrams like that for workflows. And then also, so it'll have lots of arrows and boxes and connecting things and color coding. And it's very, very much like a wiring diagram that I've already showed you. And then I put in another wiring diagram here, another way to look at a wiring diagram, right? So this is the same exact thing that I had showed you before, but without the color coding. This one looks a little bit cleaner, but like, to me, I don't think it makes as much sense. It's not as visual for visual learners. Since I am one, I was like, what would help me the most? So documenting and reviewing your workflows is really important for several reasons. Through documenting and then evaluating regularly, you can hone and make changes to your workflow to make it more efficient. It can be used basically as a checklist for folks like volunteers and staff conducting the work so that nothing gets missed. And you can use it to stop a project. Maybe you have to like focus on a request really quick and then you stop the project and then you can pick right back up where you left off, or maybe someone else can. You need to stop and go focus on something, but this staff person's going to take over for you. So you just show them where in the workflow you've left off. Documented workflows help in knowledge transfer as well. Should someone leave for another job or position, or maybe they're on vacation, right? Or some sort of leave, the workflow doesn't leave with them. And then I've found it's extremely helpful to have as much documentation when training your interns and volunteers, new employees, things like that. Okay, so we got that covered. We're now operating with the same language. So for Memory Lab, for our Memory Labs, there's several workflows for various audiences that you have to come up with. The first is for your staff. And this is just for staff that's specifically designated to run and maintain your Memory Lab. That's probably you and maybe one or two other people. We definitely recommend at least 2 people, since sometimes people leave for a new job or family or vacation or whatever, like I mentioned. The next audience is the staff and maybe volunteers who won't necessarily be the ones who are doing the nitty-gritty work of hooking everything up and cleaning your VHS deck and things like that. And they don't really need to understand how everything's hooked up, or they don't really do too much behind the scenes, but they're the ones who might be sitting on the reference desk and would have to at least go through a few troubleshooting steps with the public who are using the stations. So they're kind of in the middle. They're not experts of the lab, but they still need to know more than the general public, potentially. Then, of course, the last is the public users and visitors who will be using the lab themselves. Having documented workflows and guides for each of these audiences is really recommended. So I have resources for you to basically copy if you want. Remember that it's not going to be exactly the same because every Memory Lab is unique. The first is from our deep dive document, which, we're just diving all day, the diving. And then the next one is at DCPL's example. And then I should have added this to the slide, but it's in the notes. So thank you, Pamela, I think put that in there. Shout out to LA Public Library's excellent workflows that are also available and were talked about and recorded in webinar number 2 for the California Memory Labs. So there is links in this slide notes, but I'm also going to add it to the physical slide before you guys get a copy of this. So I'll just click out to our deep dive once again. Oh, right. I want you guys to see exactly how I get to it. So this is from our website under the resources. And you can just get to the deep dive here. I also have obviously the direct links in the slides that you guys will be getting. And then I'm scrolling, going to lab space workflows. Jump down. So the minimum steps for workflows of someone using the lab. from signing up for an appointment to transfer through until their appointment is complete and they're home with their newly created digital files. So this is obviously the audience is the public and your visitors that are coming in to use it. And I've set this up for before appointments and what that work that gets done before that, during appointments, and then after appointments. And so this walks you through really what happens at DC Public Library. Our user will sign up for an appointment, and obviously this is when the labs are open. It's not open currently, but I think we've moved towards requiring an orientation now, but we didn't for many years. So this is a 1 hour orientation with no more than 4 people at once, obviously in normal times. And that's offered 1 to 2 times per week, working with 1 staff member giving the orientation. And so this kind of works where you need to schedule the orientation. So you need a scheduling system to do this. How are you going to do that? What do you already do in your library? I recommend just doing that. And then you get to decide about how many of these orientations you offer, right? And how many appointments you offer, and how long. 2 hours is the minimum probably. I think I have heard some people doing 4. I think that's better. And then also you want to use your scheduling system to kind of keep track of statistics as well. What formats are people digitizing? How many hours is the lab being used versus not used, et cetera, which we have a whole webinar on keeping statistics as well. Form waiver, people need to sign a waiver before they use the lab. We have an example somewhere. If it's not here, I'll put it in there. It's not in there, so I'll put that in there again. I'm sure it's somewhere else, but it needs to be at multiple places. Make sure the visitors know what they have. And this is where we do have resources on our LibGuide that I'll show you to help people figure out what they have. And so that they can make sure that they're bringing in the right stuff and not wasting their time, their 3-hour appointment. And if you're going to be collecting from your users, have an option for people to click in or out, or have it for them to click in. Just have some sort of workflow or notice about during this point before they've even digitized, get them thinking about that, or not having knowledge about that. During the appointments, we have people arrive early, go through, inspect. There's adapters that need to be handed out. You just check in with the reference desk person or labs person. And then they basically visit our memory lab LibGuides online, pick their format, and start following the steps for transfer, which I'll click out to in a minute. After our appointments, we have an automated follow-up. This is through our scheduling system. This just automatically happens. We also say, if you want to ask them about an exit interview and things like that, maybe you put that in there again, and to gather more demographic information. Ask them, stay in touch, etc. Maybe you want to reiterate, do you want to donate your stuff after that, if that's something that you guys are doing. So then clicking back into this here, I just want to show you real quick our website where people do sign up for appointments. And this goes directly into our scheduling system. So this tells you what formats are accepted. You make a reservation down here. Now, thank you. Nothing's happening right now. So, it's closed, so I can't, it only really gives you classes that you can sign up for. But basically you would just click through and put in all your information and sign up. And there's a calendar that pops up, you choose which appointment you want, etc. So that's that. There's also a link on there that points you back out to our LibGuide for the memory lab, where let's say you came into the memory lab and I have a VHSC. So you go to transfer VHSC, and this is where I have a little video on how to put it into the adapter. But yeah, this is the workflow with screenshots, text, potentially, maybe, hopefully we'll have more training videos someday. So where people this is for the public. And then scrolling back up on our LibGuide, we also, have all of our different formats that you can do. We also, this is something I wanted to point out, that we have this identify your stuff that you can click through, giving some visuals. I think having real photos in here would be good too. But identifying factors for different things so that people can figure out exactly what they have. And then also we have archiving at home is something that we recently did, where we just basically teach people like how to identify what they have, how to select, how to create an inventory, example inventory of clumping your collections versus inventorying by item. And then like, yeah, just some things that they can do at home. There's a presentation that myself and my colleague Robert LaRose in the labs recorded that they can watch to give them some tips. So that is potentially, I think, something that's really good to give people things that they can do at home before they come in, especially when the lab is closed like it is currently. So that is that. And then you can look at LA Public Library's examples too, to see how different they are, and get ideas and tips from them too. As I mentioned, the other audience that you're going to be needing to build workflows for are your staff. So behind the scenes memory lab staff and the ones that only interact with the lab occasionally. We have a section in the deep dive on training your staff, both of the two types that interact with the lab. And I'm not going to talk about this today in detail, since that's your next month webinar, I believe, with Suzanne, excuse me. I'm from LA Public Library. So just know that a lot of these topics do overlap. You'll be learning more about it next month. And then creating and documenting quality workflows will assist you in the training of your staff. The section that really also overlaps with training and workflows and troubleshooting is the hooking it up and testing in the section of the deep dive that we will go through right now. Which we've already been through a bit, but you know, this is where it's going to be key for documenting as well. And this might be a good time to start documenting when you're doing your testing. So documenting your workflows for your various audiences, and start writing down frequently asked questions that you're asking yourself, right? And being like, I don't understand this, or why does this part keep not working? Or, you know, oh, and this is how I fixed it. Just be like, oh, if you're running into that regularly, probably your staff is going to run into that regularly too. So just keep that in mind and document it so that you can save people time in the long run. So where we really need to jump down is to the lab space workflows. And so here we are. We've got already got that workflow for your public out, and then you're hooking up and testing. But at the same time, you are of hooking up and testing, you're troubleshooting. So basically, troubleshooting is when things don't work the way that they should, which they're not. There's absolutely, they're not going to work. So I'm gonna pause here on this part, but and hop back over to the to this part in the slide, because I feel like it's really a really good setup that things won't work, right, the way that they should. There's so many parts that are going to go wrong. I cannot encourage you and your staff, your volunteers, so you need to be encouraging as well, your users, to embrace a philosophy of determined curiosity. And then also to practice persistent patience. Things will go wrong. That's how a memory lab works. This is why we have this entire section called troubleshooting. That's in really all parts of the memory lab process. So I really want to reiterate some aspects to troubleshooting for you, that you should be confident that when you fall down, you will get back up again. And you're welcome for now having that song stuck in your head. And then, get used to the discomfort of not knowing something and of trying something and getting your hopes up really high and then failing and having your hopes dashed again and again. And, I really also want to encourage you to ask for help. You're not expected to know everything. And the best way to learn is to ask questions. It's scary to feel dumb. I know that very personally. But if someone makes you feel dumb for asking a question, I'm just telling you now, just be like Siobhan said, that's on them. That's not on you, okay? So just also, don't worry about asking questions. Don't release the feeling of being worried about feeling dumb. But then, that worry, to decrease some of the anxiety and worry in this part, because there's a lot, remember to plan in plenty of time for doing troubleshooting. Probably more time than you think. It's hard enough to do troubleshooting without like an impending deadline hanging over your head, because you're going to be trying something, you're going to be failing, you're going to try something else, you fail again, you ask for help, you'll fail again maybe. And then the best thing I can say too is taking breaks are so important in the troubleshooting process. Go get some sleep, have lunch, get a coffee with a friend, drink some water, go look at trees in the distance. That's a great one. Conduct a hard restart or reboot of your brain and of your body, because this is, honestly, it really matters for just coming up with solutions, and then also just like the patience to be able to try things over and over. So for me, like that, what works for me is just leaving it for the day, and trying not to think about it until I've had a good night's sleep. And maybe I've emailed a colleague, and then I'll check my email in the morning and be like, an idea is planted. I'll hop in the shower, and the idea always happens in the shower. It's so weird. And then I'm like, oh my God, I think I have the solution. And it works. It really does. So before we jump back into the deep dive, I think that was a good time to take a little break from a deep dive but I still think it's really important to share specific examples going through troubleshooting, so that you can experience the process rather than having me explain it to you. And Shahed is going to talk about the call toolkit and some troubleshooting that they've done.
Thanks, Siobhan. Yeah, so the CAW program, the Community Archiving Workshop program, is an initiative of the Association of Moving Image Archivists that has been implemented across the country, including in California in our region. And so California Revealed is one of the participating organizations. So the idea is that we'd be working with librarians and archivists and members in that community to help kind of advance the work of digitizing and preserving audiovisual material that are in local collections. And this is done through the Community Archiving Workshop Train the Trainer model program, which basically, we set up these workshops where different librarians and archivists from the area will gather in one library, and we will go through some of the basics of audiovisual preservation and also work hands-on with this basic digitization kit that you see in these pictures. And the basic setup is what we've talked about in the last workshop and what Siobhan has also talked about today. So you have your laptop computer, and you have your VHS deck, you have a monitor, which is not part of the portable kit, but what is available, the CRT monitor. And then you have the TBC, the time-based corrector, and the analog to digital converter. So those are kind of the main basic portions of this setup. And as far as getting the digitization kit off the ground and working, of course, there were some troubleshooting steps that we had to go through to make sure that we were able to digitize VHS tapes. And the main ones that I wanted to kind of touch on, and a lot of this has also been covered. The main ones were the time-based corrector. So that's the device that basically stabilizes the video signal coming out of the VHS deck. So it's a complicated kind of set of tasks that the TBC does, but basically you need the video signal to go through the time-based corrector before it goes to the analog to digital converter. And the TBC, depending on what TBC you use, and keep in mind that sometimes your VHS deck or whatever playback deck you have will have a internal TBC, so you might not need to buy an external one. And it's becoming harder and harder to find and afford the TBCs, the external TBCs. But when you have your TBC, one of the things that we realize is, all the different ones obviously have different buttons, different settings, different inputs and outputs, and it really helps to consult the manual for these devices. The manuals might seem very daunting to actually refer to get any kind of useful information sometimes, as I'm sure everybody's kind of familiar with from working with any kind of item, household item or work item that has a manual. But once you skip over some of the fine print and legalese language, you do get to some of the basic pieces of information that I would encourage people to dive into, depending on the equipment that they have from the beginning. So that really helped us to figure out how exactly that particular TBC should function with our kit. And this included making sure that we had the correct color and black and white levels, and also that the connections were all working and we were getting a stable image that was the final kind of digitization product. And then the other aspect that required some troubleshooting to get this kit to work was the software that's on the computer. So depending on your analog to digital converter, which in this case we were using the Blackmagic intensity shuttle, you will have that AD converter come with a set of software that you can install on your computer. And in this case, really there's two different softwares that you need to configure correctly on your computer to have this AD converter work. And again, that took some Googling, some consulting the digital manual for the software to really set all the correct settings on the computer to be able to get an image and proper sound at the end. So, you do the capture a few times. One time maybe you don't have a sound coming, and you kind of go through the sound stream, make sure all your connections are there. Sometimes you might have the video not functioning, and you'll have to check your kind of video connections and video settings on the software. Basic troubleshooting stuff that we were able to figure out and finally digitize this. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention this process very broadly to say, if you have issues with your kits, with your memory lab setup, we're happy to help as much as we can, having gone through some of this process setting up the community archiving workshop toolkit. And
Great.
I'll pass it to Siobhan. Thanks.
Great. All right, this is our last part and section of dive in real deep. So we are in the deep dive and we're at the troubleshooting section, which a lot of what Shahed just shared, kind of like try and put out in sort of in, bullet pointy numbers kind of way, about, basically saying, remember all the things I've said about like reboot yourself, planning for time, try to minimize the anxiety. But then some other really specific tips is documented in this troubleshooting document that DC Public Library made for our staff members. So this is only for staff, not for your public. And this is more for the staff members who are in the middle, and they don't need to be like fully know everything about behind the scenes of the memory lab. So please take a look at this. Please comment too, let me know, be like, hey, here's something that we come across a lot. Or I have a question about this, I don't understand what you're saying here. But this was created from like frequently asked questions of the staff and things that go wrong regularly. Also, we show how to hook up some things I don't necessarily, I think that we just did this for documentation purposes, in case there was ever a really motivated staff member. But this is not something that I'd recommend for your middle, you know, someone who doesn't really, I wouldn't recommend hooking things up for those staff members, because they might end up making more. I just don't think that they would feel comfortable anyway, but they might end up trying and making more of a mess without having the proper training. So, and then there's also different formats, kind of breaking it into that. And yeah, it's a really good point that Shahed made, that you could break out your troubleshooting into troubleshooting hardware. So the physical pieces of your memory lab, and then troubleshooting your software on the computer that has to interact and make the hardware work. So that's a really great point. And if you want to, differentiate that in your frequently asked questions, that could be good too. And then I do have this video tutorial, won't click out, but it's another thing on YouTube that I've done where I use the CRT monitor, just an old professional TV monitor, for troubleshooting our hardware. And you can see why and how I use that. And then some other extra tips I have are keeping cables on hand, extras, to swap one out. And that's why testing them at the beginning, knowing they all work, is really good, because that's one area of failure, to see if maybe if the cable's not working, then the signal's not going to flow through it. So have an extra on hand, swap out a cable, see, and if it all of a sudden works, you're like, that is the problem. This cable doesn't work and is broken or damaged. So don't forget to throw that out so it doesn't get put back into the mix of things. Consult the manual, which is something she had mentioned. That's really important part of troubleshooting. Many times you can find your answers in there, and then you can find a free PDF of the manual online, maybe with a quick Google search. But then also a lot of times these are obsolete pieces of equipment. It's not easy to find, or someone's telling you, you have to pay for it or something like that. But I have always found a manual with just maybe a little bit more digging, asking a friend, asking on a listserv like the Association of Moving Image Archivists. There's manuals on the Internet Archive. You can search through a collection there. We have our manuals online. Once again, considered like putting your manuals that you get online, but whatever, it could be like a rights issue with something. So if you don't do that, at least just maybe tell folks, like, contact us if you want to know more about our equipment. The manufacturer could be an option where you contact them and ask them for help, or a manual, or just say, hey, this is my problem. Like, I've called Sony before, and mostly it's not been a great, because they just don't manufacture it anymore, but they usually say, like, find an old engineer or something like that. Yeah, it might be worth a shot. It's just another part of the process that I would recommend. And it definitely can yield results for stuff that's actually manufactured right now. So this has happened with the Pixie FS time-based corrector. There's been an issue every now and again where some switch gets flipped, and one of our partners contacted the manufacturer, and they were like, oh yeah, here's what you do. Walk them through, and it worked within minutes. I also wanted to mention about time-based correctors, since Shahed mentioned that was an area of troubleshooting that they needed to get through, is that we're going to be, for our June Memory Lab Network webinar, we're going to be having Morgan Morrell talk all about time-based correctors, TBCs, and like what exactly they do, why they do this magic, and like why they're so integral to the AV digitization process and things like that, just to help you guys understand a little bit more. Instead of just being like, oh yeah, this is an important part, it's really nice to be like, oh, that's what that's doing. Amazing. And that way you can like go and really fight for having one, and fight for maintaining having one in your memory lab. So that's going to be happening in June, and we'll record it and put it up on our YouTube. Just want to point that out. After consulting the manufacturer, there are other places that you can ask questions, right? Just reiterate that asking questions is the best way to troubleshoot. You can go to the archives of the AMIA, that's the Association of Moving Image Archivists. Their listserv has an archive. I have a link. Just go right there and start searching for your particular issue. But then also you could post to the listserv, or ask someone who is an AMIA member, ask them to post for you. These are always options to get professionals' opinions right away and now. So there are other forums that you could take a look at: Video Help Forum, Digital FAQ, Mac Rumors, things like that. Just keep in mind that they can be really technical. Sometimes they're like video engineers. So state your lack of experience up front. Maybe be ready for people to maybe be a little snarky, or also just like be ready to ask follow-up questions, and know that they're not coming at this from an archival perspective. So they might just be trying to like fix the problem, but that might endanger your tape, or result in a too low of a quality for what we want for our memory lab, just personally. And another thing we wanted to kind of put out there is, we have that troubleshooting document for our staff, but maybe you want to make an FAQ or a troubleshooting document for the public and be like, hey, if this happens, do this. So we don't do that for DCPL, but it might be something that we end up incorporating more into our process. We kind of just, I think initially didn't want people like pressing buttons, or it just seemed more efficient to have a staff member do it. But if you are really low on staff, then I think having an FAQ would potentially help. So, and then to keep your lab up and running, you really need to make sure that people's tapes are in good condition, so that they don't damage your equipment. And then you'd have to like do this troubleshooting of what's the problem. And then if you figure out, oh, it's the deck and it's because someone put in a really dirty tape, we want to avoid that. So I have some tutorials up on, reshelling and fixing, reshelling some tapes, and then fixing a really easy fix on a compact cassette tape. But basically this is like if someone brings in a tape and it's cracked, the shell is cracked and things like, or like I've seen ones with hinges like off. And so this is where you can't put that in the memory lab. So this is just maybe additional programming. You could do a little workshop where people bring in their tapes and you have the precision screwdrivers and things like that they could use to reshell it into a new shell. And so that is some extra learning there for sort of troubleshooting people's tapes that can't go into the deck. So that is our presentation today. I'm sure people have some questions, probably lots of questions, but you can reach me. I am on Twitter at memlabnet, and then this is my email and Shahed's email as well to ask questions and specifics. Pamela, I know, is highlighting the next brown bag for you all. And I'd just love to have you there.
Yeah, I did want to invite everyone. I just set up a registration link for the next 4 Tuesdays, the last Tuesday of each month. All are welcome to attend. So there's the link for registration. Please come and we can troubleshoot live. That'd be fun. Siobhan, there was a question actually when you were talking about plugging stuff in and the inventory. Someone asked about the cooling pad and what that's for, and it's not on the inventory list, but it's part of the diagram.
Right, yes, great question and good eye. So that was actually a previous iteration of what we were telling people to buy. And so maybe like the first 4 of our library partners has this, where the analog to digital converter was the Blackmagic intensity shuttle. And I had done some research into it on forums, and then also sort of anecdotally with other AV archivists that they used it, they liked it, but it would overheat regularly. So one way that someone worked around that, this was actually Nathan Avant, is an AV archivist that figured out, he was like, yeah, I just put it on a laptop cooler and it doesn't overheat anymore. So I thought that was a great hack. I was like, hey, let's just do that. So that's why Blackmagic no longer manufactures the intensity shuttle. So I had to reconfigure everything and be like, okay, well now we're gonna purchase this mini converter, and then we have to have this other converter that takes that SDI into Thunderbolt, which is such a pain. But so there's going to be more. I haven't updated the workflows or anything because I update the workflow, then I have to update the tutorial, and it's, you know, that's more for a training. That's why I try to say, like, it's not exact, like what you're going to be doing and putting together is not going to be what that setup is, but at least then you can get the idea of, like, here's a wiring diagram, here's how she's setting it up, and then you can use those foundational skills, and you're not necessarily copying me, but at least you're learning how this is going to work, and then trying and failing on your own.
Yeah. So the new AD converter, the Pixie, doesn't need anything like that.
Well, that's the TBC. Yeah. From what I could tell, there's not, that overheating process is not happening anymore.
Okay.
So, with this other one. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. The
Well,
latest
it's like
version.
Q8.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Brandon says thank you. Okay. Thanks for
Yeah.
clearing that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it does, go to show that having these Google Docs, the live versions, are really helpful. And I love the sourcing idea. So thanks for setting that up.
Oh yeah. Thank you for instigating.
It's good. We all need it.
Yeah.
And then Katie Olding, mentioned you were making her laugh when you mentioned having a slogan that's on you, not me. Siobhan said, that's on you, not me.
Yeah, right? Because I've had that trust me, y'all, like, I've had people make me feel so dumb for asking, like, what I thought was a good question. And unfortunately, it just might happen. And that's not on you. So.
Nice. People could put that up as a sign of encouragement in their labs.
Right? Yeah. Like,
yeah, you had some good nuggets in your slides. Thank you for all the encouragement.
Yeah, I really do believe that is one of the biggest hindrances to people building memory labs that I've seen honestly that I've like felt when I was first initially learning in school and becoming an AV archivist, was just like overcoming my fear of breaking things, my fear of like doing something wrong, my fear of looking stupid. So once I could overcome that and I was able to ask questions and try things and fail, then I learned so much more quickly. And I just really want to encourage people from that to just jump right in the water spot.
Yeah. And documenting too, with, just how the troubleshooting documentation is growing too, is like a testament to that process of just trying and failing and learning from that failure and trying again. So yeah, I love all your documentation. Alan in the chat says thank you. It's so impressive how comprehensive the deep dive doc has gotten. So yeah, if you're really filling it out, it's great.
Yeah, and you all are helping. So if you do have a question about something, really, please reach out. And literally, even if you think it's not like relevant, or be like, oh, I'm sorry, maybe you covered this, like I might not have. So, or I might have said it in a way that's like not clear, because, we're all human. So having more input into how this is actually really on the ground working or not working is extremely helpful.
Yes. And speaking to workflows, for you all out there putting it together and planning, I mean, don't be shy about sharing your ideas too, even as it's coming together, because I think everyone can learn from like your setup. And I think too, as the equipment's changing, it would be great to see how people are working with the current iterations, and just sharing that process of hooking up, especially because we're not in person and can't be for a little while. So yeah, if we could share virtually, if anyone wants to, if anyone's willing to join, to even like host a brown bag, that could be a topic at a brown bag. If people want to bring in a camera and kind of, use your phone and just kind of zoom around and show people what you're doing, that would be fun, I think. Yeah. Are there any other questions out there? Please don't be shy. Let's put them in the chat.
Yeah, I want to make sure. And I'm actually gonna thank you for the earlier question. I'm gonna put in I'm making a note to myself, put in the documentation to say in there, like, hey, these videos no longer match what is in our equipment list. So thank you again.
Any other questions or comments? We can also end a little early. I know
Yeah, it's a lot of info.
it is, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess we can end. I did want to remind everyone of our next webinar. Next month, we are going to be talking about staff training with Suzanne M. from LAPL. She's going to come back and talk about how they've been handling their training, which started off, I think, all volunteer-based, and now they have more support with their maker space staff. But yeah, what they've done is pretty inspirational because they've only been up and running maybe a year. So they've done a lot, and it would be nice to hear an update on their reopening plans because I think they are technically open, but I'm not sure about the lab yet. So we'll get the latest news from Suzanne next month. And I think you all have that link because I mentioned it earlier. Let me just pull that up. It's going to be June 11th from 10 to 11:30, same time on a Friday. And there's the registration link. So please come, tell your Memory Lab friends to come. It'll be a lot of fun. Thank you so much, Siobhan and Shahed, for being here and
You're
talking about
welcome. Thanks,
workflows.
Bill.
Next
Yeah.
time we'll be together in person.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having us.
But this is great. Thank you so much for all your resources, Siobhan.
You are welcome. I'm so glad to be here. As always, please reach out, everyone. And also don't forget about the Slack. A lot of times
Yes.
there's great info in there too that might not make it into the deep dive. So
Yes, look out for that Slack invite.
cool. Thank you all so much for coming.
Bye, thank you.